good afternoon. My name is Rory McKillian. I work for Ulster GAA as a Key Stage 2 coach, and you're very welcome to our webinar today. And the webinar is on cross-curricular links, how to develop a theme in PE. Now, before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. Just note that the webinar is being recorded. Everything is recorded. So the presentation will be emailed out as well to anybody that has signed up. And if I could just get you to use the chat box to ask questions or make comments. So I'm gonna be asking, for some participation, and I think that's how we will best get the ball rolling on different topics. So if you can use the chat box to type in any questions or comments that you have, it'd be very helpful. Thank you. So this is the 4th week of our, sorry, it says 5 there, we possibly have another one we're still working on. This is the 4th week where we're looking at, we have had introduction to games, how effectively to plan PE, tricks of the trade, and this week, cross-curricular links and how to develop the theme in PE. So we'll skip ahead with quite a bit to go through. So by the end of the session, I want to be able to identify ways to incorporate cross-curricular ideas into PE lessons. I want to use PE to help bring a curriculum theme to life, and using familiar games that we've seen before and used before in a way that will enable cross-curricular. Okay, so first off, I'm going to look at numeracy. So this is where I'm going to ask you as the teachers to get involved here, and I want you just to, in the question or the chat box, I want you to put in any aspects of numeracy that could be used in PE. Now, you might have seen them before, you might have used them before, you maybe just, you were teaching them and you thought, that could be transferred across. So if I could get you now to type in any aspects of the numeracy curriculum, which may be able to be used in PE lessons and games, things like that. So we'll just keep an eye on the chat box here and see what we're getting in terms of suggestions. So somebody has said odd and even numbers. Absolutely. When especially we've seen it before in the previous sessions with the other guys, picking teams, your evens and odds, things like that's a quick one. Kids should be familiar with warming up, counting forwards and backwards. Absolutely. We often do a warm up where the kids are moving their arms forward, counting forward, moving their arms back, counting backwards, maybe running forwards and running backwards as well, counting at the same time. Area and perimeter, that's a good one. So we can introduce area and perimeter when we're talking about the space that we're using, or maybe you made a confined space in the area in the sports hall or wherever you're doing your games. So you talk to them about area, the perimeter around the different shapes. Time exercises, how many you can do in a certain time. So we've seen a lot of these skills videos currently going around. It's asking the kids to do a skill or do some sort of a game and do as many as they can in a certain time. So, yep, absolutely, all brilliant answers. So we'll just skip down to the next one. So, as was pointed out there in the suggestion box, counting in increments of 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. They're all very familiar. I'm sure everybody's seen them. Everybody's probably used them before. Multiplication, then, I suppose, as if you're dealing with the Key Stage 2 kids, things like that, you can introduce multiplication. Measure and estimation. So I have actually seen this used before. So for the estimation, I'll just look at that first. So for estimation, I've seen games where kids start at one side of the hall, throw a beanbag to the other side, but first of all, they have to estimate how many throws it's going to take to get to the other side of the hall. For measure, then, I have used games myself where the kids measure out a certain space using non-standard methods, such as your stride, such as arm length, such as body lengths. So that's an easy one. Shape's another one where we have you get them into groups, and you might say to them, okay, you have to make a shape that's thin, long. So maybe they'll make the rectangle. You don't give them the name as such. They have to come up with it themselves. Maybe you'll say, you need to get into a shape with 3 sides. So then they have to try and form a triangle. Maybe you say a side with pointed, like a star sort of thing. So as you're moving around the hall, you would just say, okay, in groups of 5, and then when you get in their groups, you'd say, okay, I want you to make a long, thin shape. Let them work away. Then they have to figure out decision making, critical thinking, and angles. So this is another one I've used before, where the kids are moving around. You call a number, maybe they get into 2s, 3s, 4s, and you tell them, okay, you've got to make a 90-degree angle. So they need to work together to line themselves out so that they make that shape. You could say, you've got to make an acute angle, an obtuse angle. You've got to make 180 degrees. You've got to keep them thinking like that. Then they're working out. There's a bit of teamwork in it. They've got to talk, communicate, to figure out where they should stand, where they should move to make an acute or an obtuse. And direction, and I've just used a wee diagram there. So another one I would play often is compass directions game. So I would set 4 cones, or possibly 8, depending on the age of the kids. And I would name the cones north, east, south, west. And as the kids are warming up and moving around, I'll shout north. They have to run to the north cone. I'll shout south. They have to run to the south cone. East and west, same thing. That can be progressed, and I'll show you how you progress that later on a little bit in when we touch on world around us. So as you can see, folks, numeracy, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. There's lots and lots of different methods that we could look at. As I say, you guys are the teachers. I work for Ulster GA, but previous to that, I was teaching for 10 years, for 5 or 6 years here in Ireland, and then I worked as a teacher in the United States for 4 years. So I do feel I've got a good experience talking about this, but there's people that are working day to day and have been for years and years will have a huge experience. So please let's use the chat box to generate discussion. If you think you've seen something before that has worked and that I haven't mentioned, feel free to add in a question or add in a comment, and we'll either cover it now or maybe at the end, if we've got time, we can talk a little bit about that. So I'm just going to show you a little game here. Just going to leave it first of all. So this game is Rob the Nest. This is a game that probably most people will have seen. Very simple game. You can see the way the hall's split out. Now that's very simple into 4 groups. You can do 6, 8, whatever amount that you want really. It doesn't really matter. You use the full size of the hall, spread them out. And basically the kids run in, grab something, run back out. So I'll let it play then. So they take it in turns, run in, take a piece of equipment, run back out, next person goes. Fairly straightforward, very easy game. I'm sure everybody's probably seen it. But what we can do then, we can use that game to incorporate numeracy, because obviously they have to count at the end. They count up, how many pieces of equipment they've got, things like that. You could know with your Key Stage 2 kids, maybe you could do multiplying. So each piece of equipment is worth 3 points. So if we've got 10 pieces, they're multiplying 3 by 10. And then again with the older kids, I have introduced before negative numbers. So with Rob the Nest, all the equipment's not going to be the same color. You're going to have different color cones, different color balls, things like that, bibs. So I would give each color a point. So say a red is worth 1 point, the blue is worth 2, green is worth 3. So at the end they've got to figure out, okay, we've got 5 reds, 3 blues, 2 greens. So they've got to work out the different points. It's a good way of working out counting like that. And then, as I say, with the older kids, I've actually used negative numbers as well. So maybe one of the colors that you've used, say white, is worth -2. So they add everything up to figure out their full score, and then they've got to minus the negative numbers, so take those away. So I feel that has worked well for me before. And as I say, as you can see, it's a very simple game. You put all your equipment in the middle of the hall. You split up off around the sides, get them into groups, and let them work away. So the kids love it. Loads of activity. The spatial awareness, they've got to move in. They're avoiding traffic, taking and moving out as quick as they can. So they're all active. They love it. So okay, so I'm just going to go into literacy here then, folks. So again, using our chat box, using our discussion or our questions. How can we introduce literacy into PE lessons? So numeracy is an easy one. because, you know, counting, things like that, that's, you know, you use that a lot, even for keeping score. You know, you play a game, you keep score, you're always counting, really. So literacy, has anybody ever seen or used or thought of any aspects of literacy that you might transfer into a PE lesson? If you could just drop a comment in or a question into our little chat box. As I say, probably doesn't jump out literacy as much as numeracy, but there is definitely different aspects we can use. So we'll just give you a couple of a minute or so just to get some comments in there into the chat box. And as I say, you might not have used it, you know, might have been someone else in the class, maybe it's a different coach you saw, but you just saw to yourself as you saw a PE lesson, that actually touches on, you know, a little bit of a literacy there. So there are different ways we can do it. Maybe not just as easily as numeracy, as I say, with counting and keeping score, but there usually is most of the subjects we can incorporate in some way. So just give it another couple of seconds then in the chat box, see if it's coming through. Okay, thank you very much for coming through now. And so I'll just touch on some of them. Unfortunately, you know, probably time restraints means I can't look and elaborate on all of them, but you know, if we could, I'll touch on some of them here. So someone has said here, letters and forming words. Absolutely. A warm-up that I would play. A lot of these sometimes are warm-up games, but you know, you can obviously make the game longer and suit your class as you need. And again, with a lot of this, this is pitched towards like a general, because as a teacher, you'll know where your class is, the level they are. If they can do multiplying, as I said, if they can do negative numbers, that wouldn't maybe apply to your class, or you can make it more difficult and progress it on. So with the letters and forming words, it's a good one. So I've used that myself as a warm-up before, where the kids are moving around and you're giving them movements, you know, skipping and hopping and jumping and different little activation sort of activities. Or so then you would say, right, groups of 4, get them in, to have to run in, get into the groups of 4, and you would have to say, okay, you have to form the letter A. So they have to, you know, lying down, or even if they want to stand up, they have to make the letter A, make that shape. Just to progress that again, sometimes I've done that and said without communicating. So they've got to do without verbally communicating. So they've got a non-verbal communication to try and work together and figure out how to do it. There's another good one, writing instructions. So that is a good one, especially with our previous sessions. The boys have touched on free play, and free play is a great activity. So oftentimes the coach will say, okay, there's some equipment, there's a ball, there's whatever it is. Now if you go and want you and your team, maybe 2 or 3 group mates, I want you to come up with your own game. So with that comes instruction. So absolutely, they have to figure out rules, guidelines. Acting a story through dance, brilliant. Yep, and we'll touch on that again. There's a little bit coming down aside in a few minutes. We're going to look at that. But drama, yeah, dance is a great one, especially when kids love it. Music's going, and you get a little bit of drama, a little bit of acting or reenacting. Absolutely. Describing, yep. So they're describing their performance, their movements. You know, why they might have done something, why they move in a certain way. So you're dragging or drawing it out of them. They're describing it for you. Yep. Moving it around the hall through characters and stories. That's an excellent one. So you could say, right, I want you to move around like you know, character from, you know, Shrek or one of their movies, and they have to move around. So very, very good. So we'll just skip on then. So the first one I would have thought of was talking and listening skills. So with most games, or nearly all games, you know, they've got to follow instructions, even if, you know, the kids are very familiar with them. You'd always give a little instruction towards the start of the game. Maybe it's to change rules a little bit, or maybe it's just to reinforce what you've told them before. So that's, you know, that's talking and listening skills. Taking turns to invent a game and explain the rules. Sorry, it's cut off slightly there. So that's where I talked about free play. You know, I've often done that, said 2, 3 kids, just give them some equipment and I want you to go and make up your own game. You see the kids then communicating and explaining to each other, explaining the rules, explaining to other groups that they have to show. So that's a great one. It really gets them talking and communicating. And then rhyming. So I've also done that as a game. So I've got them into like moving around, called out a number, say number 5. They get into groups of 5, and then they've got to do a rhyming activity. So somebody says a word, and then the 4 others have to rhyme against that. So it's cat, bat, hat, that sort of thing. So that's good. That's a fun little one. Enjoy that. So sequence and stories. So this was touched on in the comments and the questions there a little bit. So dance and recalling. So I've seen lessons before where there's, they're in a group and they have to do a little dance. Then the next person has to do the dance that the previous person done and add their own. And the same with the next person, they have to do the little move that the previous 2 done, add their own, and so on. So that's a good little activity. And then by the end, the last person or the last couple of people have a big long dance routine to try and recall plus add their own. So good fun. And then with that comes, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I've seen games where you dance where you put them off, and you've got to say, right, I want you to come up with your own sequence. It has to have a little beginning, so there's an obvious beginning, a middle, and an end. So that's touching on story writing and things like that. Drama. Let me just move the screen. Okay, so drama and reenacting. Again, we touched on it there in the comments section. With reenacting anything, the person said it was a very good answer. Reenacting characters and stories. So that's drama. They're moving around, they're playing, they're reenacting something, it falls perfectly into drama, which is on that. And role play. So I've seen activities where you say to the group, right, you're up in a group and you've got to role play something, maybe reenacting a scene. We're going to touch on something now, a few minutes, just to look at it. It's kind of reenacting, but there's different ways, there's different activities. You get them to reenact anything, reenact your day, getting up out of bed, reenact, getting on the school bus, coming to school, walking in, or cycling your bike into school, things like that. So there's a lot of scope for adding drama into, especially our dance lessons. And finally, letter formation and spelling. As I said, we touched on this as well. Making letter shapes. This is probably a more obvious one, the kids probably nearly always played this a lot. Getting them in the groups, making up a letter shape. Or the more advanced you go, maybe your older kids could try to spell out a word. Again, I've done it with verbal communication and non-verbal as well, so it works well. Makes them communicate in different ways and try and guide each other. And there's a little game here I'm just going to show you in the next slide. It's called Alphabet Soup. Okay, and just thought I'd use this visual, it's probably easier. So Alphabet Soup. So I've got resources in this PowerPoint that will be sent out to all the participants here. And I just wanted to, include these so that when you go away, at least you have some resources you can look back at and you can take a little bit from it, with some lesson plans and some things like that. So Alphabet Soup then, it's a simple game. There's your area, your hall or your play area. What I've done before is I've given everybody gets a letter. You just line them up, A, B, C, D, E. Everybody gets a letter. On the call, they've got to move around. They remember their letter. They're moving around. You're giving them activities, maybe movements, and you'll say, right, go, and that means they have to go find other people who they could spell out a word. So, for example, A tries to find N and D. Or you'll find they'll all run to each other, and then they're communicating, saying, "What letter are you? What letter are you?" Just then you can try and get the first group to spell out a word. So maybe the thing is you can do it with younger ones, but it's a little bit difficult to forget their numbers and things like that. It's more probably pitched to your Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and the first group then to be able to spell out a word gets the pointer. And then you can just go again, change up the letters if you want. So it's a good wee game, good wee warm up, especially they love moving around. So this is a little video I'm going to show you just on dance and drama. So we touched on it. It was about reenacting and role playing and things like that. This is I've just taken this. This is a YouTube video, but I have the links at the end of the PowerPoint if anybody wants to see it. So I thought this was a good example. It was just kids reenacting the haka, so I'm looking at watch it. Okay, so there you see, you've got your main actors here in front. They're the guys that are reenacting the haka. So there's dance in there, there's movement, you know. So underneath the arts, you're touching on the arts there because you've got movement, you've got sound, you've got dance, you've got drama. So it touches on all those things. You've got the guys in the front here who, you know, your main actors, but you've also got support people in the back. You know, their role is to be the crowd, to be the supporters in the stands, and you can see they're up on tables. I wouldn't condone putting kids up for health and safety reasons, but you can see that, I mean, not everybody wants to be the main character. Some people like to be a less role, so it suits other people. They can be their supporters, and then you've got your dancers in front. So I thought that was a very good example. I've also seen before reenacting of things like, you know, the Sunday game. So you get the kids to reenact this a little activity, just reenacting the start of a game. So they're marching around behind the band, they're waving to the crowd, they're, you know, getting limbered up, getting stretched out, ready to play the game. Another one might be, you know, reenacting a swimming gala. So same thing, kids pretend that they're walking in, they're waving to their supporters or their family, you know, they're standing up and get called to stand up and they do their wave, and then, you know, obviously not diving into the floor, but, you know, pretending to jump. So that's another good one. So there's a big scope there for adding drama into your dance lessons through reenacting and sort of thing. So that was a good example. So we're just going to go on the word around us then. As I say, I'm kind of skimming through these quickly enough, but if there's aspects you have, you know, are more interested in and you want to ask a question, we'll get time at the end. Let's say I'll answer as many as I can, if I can. So don't be afraid if you see me talk about anything that you want a little bit more information on, or how you would implement it in a lesson. Don't be afraid to ask a question. So the question I'm asking here is, how can we introduce world around us now into our PE lessons? So if you could pop a few suggestions into our chat box, and I'll keep an eye on it here. So world around us, then obviously it's probably a bigger scope for adding in than literacy, and maybe to an extent numeracy, because you've got your geography and your arts and your science and your history, all different aspects in the world around us. So there's loads we can actually say. I'm not going to get through everything that would come under that umbrella of world around us, but I'll highlight or demonstrate some areas that I have seen or I've used myself. And I'm just going to keep an eye on the chat box here. So if you could just pop in some suggestions. The list is not exclusive. It's there's I'm probably missing out loads, and that's where you guys as teachers, you would know a lot of different examples that you could put into your PE lessons. So please hit us up with some suggestions, and I'll talk about them as best I can. Okay, there's some coming in now. So there's a good one, yeah. So something I've done before is playing games with countries for geography, and I have a little video of a game that I've played before, and it works well. Animals and movements, yep, animals movements, a great one, especially for your younger kids. So we often do animals and mini beasts warm up. So as the kids are moving around, you're telling them, you know, make a giraffe, make an elephant, make, you know, whatever animal you think. Same thing with mini beasts. Then it's getting them down to crawling, and maybe you see a worm or a spider. You've got to make those animal shapes or animal movements. So that's a great one. See if there's any more. TikTok, somebody said here. I'm not sure. Not an expert in TikTok now, so maybe you can elaborate on that one. Okay, so just as I say, not exclusive by any means. There's lots of other examples out there. So just a couple that I have used before myself: the Vikings and ancient Ireland. So parts of our world around us come under the history section. So Vikings. So I have added I've added in 3 lesson plans, and I'll just touch on them briefly after on the way through here. I'm not going to look at them in great detail, but they're in the PowerPoint presentation for you to go back and have a look at if you wish. There's some good games that you can play. There are different links to the Vikings and things like that. So maybe something that I play kind of a lot in my lessons will be European handball, and the European handball game is actually could be traced back to a Viking game. I can't remember the exact name. It's Norse or Old Norse language, but same sort of rules. You're throwing the ball from one person to the other. So you know, I've played it before, and I've mentioned that link, the link with the Vikings. I know that's a theme that a lot of schools do cover. Ancient Ireland games. So I've done a little bit on this as well in a PE lesson where you're making connections to ancient Ireland. So the Tailteann Games actually dates pre the Olympics, so it's got connections to the Olympics, and that's, you know, throwing things, jumping high, jumping far, running games. You know, if you look into it, as I said, I've added in lesson plans here and I've made connections to them, and you can go back and afterwards you're welcome to go back and look at them in more detail. But that was a good one, I thought, because, you know, obviously the kids would be familiar with the Olympics, but maybe not as much. They wouldn't be as familiar with the Tailteann Games. But you know, it's part of Irish history, and it just shows that, you know, a lot of the games that were played then still played nowadays, and, you know, just in a different form or given a different name. So science is another one. There's a huge scope for adding science really into our PE lessons. So with every session, you know, you're touching on the human anatomy. When you're doing your warm-up, when you're talking to them about the breathing, when you're talking to them about their heart rate going up and down, we do a healthy heart project, and some schools will be familiar with it. And we've used heart rate monitors to show the kids how their heart rate goes up as they move around and why it does, and, you know, the sort of the science behind it. And then you've got your, you know, your basic stuff like stretching and muscle groups and different bones in your body. You know, we often talk about those in our lessons, and, you know, you don't maybe automatically make the cross-curricular connection if you're including science in your PE lesson, but, you know, it's there every single lesson. I've used this one as well, the Eat Well plate. So there's a game, it's a great game I have played before. It's the same format as Rob the Nest. So your cones and your equipment are put into the middle, and each colour is a food group. So, you know, your greens might be your fruit and veg, your reds are your protein, you know, your carbs, and, you know, maybe blue or something. So they all have to run in, and they're grabbing the equipment in and out and bringing it back out to the group. And they're, as a group, they're discussing, you know, oh, we've got too much, you know, carbs on our plate here. We need to swap that with some fruit and veg from another group. So they're moving around and they're trying to balance their plate so that it is an Eat Well plate, or a healthy eating plate for me. And then, as we say, we touched on there in the warm-ups, animals and mini beasts. That's an easy one. Most people will have seen this before. I want you to move around like a certain animal or a certain mini beast, and, you know, the kids love it. You get a bit of drama as well, a bit of reenacting, definitely in your science curriculum there. So then your geography. So where I live, I've got one of my lesson plans is on where I live, and it's touching on the water system as well, waters and rivers. So I'm touching that a little bit further on, but places around the world then. Somebody made that suggestion, playing games with counties for geography. It's counties. I've linked that to my the numeracy warm-up where I use direction. So I might say set my cones out north, east, south, west, and then, you know, maybe you play a couple of rounds of that, and then you change it and you'd say, right, I want you to name me a county that's in the north, a county that's in the east, a county in the south, and a county in the west. Get them to name the different cones, and then they're moving around. You decide, okay, I want you to move to Antrim. So they're all moving towards northern cone. Maybe you shout Cork, they've got to move to Cork, and then you know that's south. Dublin and Galway, same thing, east and west. So that works well, kids love it. Keeps them thinking then about the different counties, and again, you can use that with countries as well. So instead of counties of Ireland, you can say northern countries, southern countries, east and west as well. So the game works well and definitely links in geography into our games. So I'm just going to go on here to a game. It's called the Fitness Amazing Race. So I'm just going to sort of explain it here and I'll let it play. And what happens is, this is a good one for incorporating geography into our lesson, because there has to be a little bit of pre-work before you play the game, sort of pre-lesson work. You would, if you were doing geography lessons on countries around the world, a good one then is to maybe put your class into groups, give them a country, and they've got to decide. They have to go then and do a bit of research, find out how far away that country is from us. And obviously Australia, is it further away than Sweden, things like that. So then as a group, then they've got to decide how many laps around the court it would be to get to Australia. So if Sweden was 2 laps, Australia's got to be more than that. Australia might be 5 laps. So what would happen then is they would have, you can see here, there's an exercise zone, and there's space for running around. You can see the flags there are spread out. You get them into groups. One person's in the exercise zone and one person's running. I'll just let it play now. So the person, each card, they pick a card from the table or from the area where the cards are. You can see here, just pause it. So one is running, this person's running. The person who's running first, that's their section, and the other person who's doing the exercise in the exercise zone, that's what they've got to do. They've got to do the tuck jumps or star jumps, or jogging on the spot, or you can it's completely up to yourself. So just let it play on. So I think this one works well because it gives them an understanding of whereabouts in the world these countries are in relation to us. So you can see this person here has got Sweden. So the person running has to do 2 laps. So I'll play on. So you can see this person, they get Sweden, they've got to do 2 laps, they'll go flying around twice, while the person in the exercise zone is working on, some exercises of their choice, tuck jumps, things like that. Person then stops once they get the 2 laps done, and they swap over. So then the next person takes the next card. They'll be doing their laps, the other person will be doing the exercises. I say again, it gives them a great understanding of how far away things are in relation to where we live. The further they are, the more laps they would do. So it's good at the game. So I'll just skip on to then here I'm just aware of the time, so time flies so quick here. The introducing a theme in the PE. So these are the lesson plans I spoke about. You can see here in the yellow boxes the main content. The rest is fact and resources, curriculum links, things like that. So the first one, sorry, I'll just go back. First one is the Vikings. So as I say, I'm going to leave them here for people to go back on their own time. They can check through them. It's quite a lot, but there's different games that link the Vikings to our PE lesson. This one is called Wet, Wet, Wet. I'm sorry, I've one in between. So, okay, games of ancient Ireland, there you go. So I spoke about that one before, the Taliesin games, things like that, linking that into modern day sports that we play. So then they've got an understanding that the games that we play today have links to ancient Ireland, have been played for centuries in some form or other. And it's as simple as high jumps, races, and throwing, catching, things like that. So then I'm just going to skip on to the last one. It's called Wet, 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 and it's about water systems, weather systems, rivers, lakes. Again, a huge part of our curriculum and the area of world around us. So I'm just going to look at it in a little bit more detail here. So you can see there the warm-up, catch and release. So this is a good one for if you're looking at local rivers, local lakes, things like that. You can talk to them about different fish maybe that are in our lakes and in our rivers. So that's a catch and release. That's a game that's familiar to them. One couple of people are catching, a couple of people are releasing. If they're caught, they're frozen until they're released. So so there's just going down then into rob the fish mark. And again, I love the game rob the nest, but you can vary it in so many ways that it's linked to so many different curriculum areas. So rob the fish market, each colour then, instead of numbers, give them a name. The fish, a trout, an eel, a pike, a perch. They go then, they may be different, each fish is worth a different score. Again, so there's numeracy in there, there's local science there, the different types of fish in our local rivers and lakes. And then again, you can progress that. So then there's one there, cross-cirricular, a little game I would play lots, but I wouldn't necessarily call it that all the time. So the kids move from one side to the hall or the area to the other. and you've got a few people who are fishermen and they're sliding, or fisherwomen, and they're sliding cones and they're trying to hit people with a cone as they're running through. So you can use geographical terms there. So you can say one side Cloonbridge, one side Mahari, just so that they have an idea of the different areas which surround Lough Neagh. And again, you can use local fish names, trout and eels and things like that. And then the last one, activity 2, across the Bann, Nile, Mississippi or Shannon. I've played this as well with classes. I called it across the Nile because they were doing things about the pyramids in Egypt. So therefore you've got to link that local river. And all it is across the river. It's the same thing, but you're adding in your place names and things like that, so they get an idea. Okay, Egypt, River Nile, there's a link there. And just say that the Egyptians talk about the Nile. Kids to name cities, so there you are. So you just name cities, one side, one group. You're one side of the Nile, you're the other side. Get them to come up with place names that suit. So I'll leave that little lesson plan, as I say, in there. Free, people can go back through, use them. So I'm just going to move on here. How can we introduce PDMU? Now, I often thought PDMU is a difficult one to get into PE lessons. What it's actually not. It's quite prevalent in our PE lessons, PDMU. So if you can, again, use in your chat box your questions, you give us some suggestions on how you can introduce PDMU into PE lessons. It is more. It's in there a lot more than we think, really. If you look at every game, there's a bit of PDMU. We'll just wait for some answers here. Sorry, I forgot to touch on the world around us. Yeah, so brilliant suggestions there. Sorry, my iPad, a little bit of a lag here, didn't update. So people were saying for the world around us games that they have seen before. Very, very good examples. A game like Rob and Nesta, you go Viking raids, perfect. Great link there to your Vikings. Dance routines, Arctic and Antarctic, moving like animals from areas, very good. Exploring heart rate, body muscles and PE, some brilliant answers there. Sorry, I missed that. My iPad didn't update the question section there. So dances from around the world, that's a great one. I've seen that before as well. Victorian street games for history. Again, looking at the different links that the games were back then. Maps and Blue Planet, using body to move like different animals. There's loads and loads of different ways we can use the world around this curriculum in our PE lessons, and games are still fun. The kids are familiar with the games. You just maybe change the name and add in a little bit of terminology from your world around us, make them a bit more familiar with it. So let's see if it'll update here. I'm trying to get. Okay, there we go. So PDMU there, answers coming through now. Thank you very much. Sportsmanship. So that's an obvious one. So when you think of your PDMU, you've got your sportsmanship, you've got the teamwork, communication, cooperation. Somebody said guess the emotion, acting out things, yeah. So you're a little bit of drama and reenacting there, it's very good. One person acts the emotion, the others guess, very good. Taking turns, that's a big one. So PDMU, as I say, it's prevalent in every single PE or sports game or lesson that we do. They've got to learn to take turns, they've got to work together, they've got to use other people, somebody said, including other people's strengths and skills, and complementing each other, very good. If we can incorporate, if we can instill that in our kids, to complement each other, be kind, and using people's strengths and skills, excellent, great answers there. Say cooperation and sharing, that's a big one. You want the kids to be able to cooperate with each other, communicate with each other and share, and realize that it's just not all about them. So things that I've just thought of then would be mental toughness and resilience. Every game, you can't win every game. It's you want them to try their best, and if they don't win, you want to build up the resilience in them. That they're not completely disheartened. That they can shrug it off and say, "I'll win the next one. I'll try again." Good relations. So good relations, you want them to be fair to each other. You want them helping each other. You don't want to see one kid too disheartened about it, and somebody laughing because their team won and the other guy's team didn't win. So that thing, you want to keep them and being fair to each other, nice and playing well. Teamwork games is a big one. So most of our PE games would involve some form of teamwork, and that's, if we can instill in the kids, teamwork is a huge thing. It's going to help them later in life as well. They go to get jobs, they're working as part of a team, comes natural then. And value is important to me. So being a good competitor, you want to see the kids being a good competitor and following the rules. So there's no point, one kid winning every week but they're cheating. Or you want them to find values in playing games, so they walk away and they're happy. There's not as much tension, and they're being mindful of others. You want them to be a good winner. It's easy sometimes, laugh and celebrate things, but you want to be a good winner. You don't want to be flaunting things in people's faces. So they're in nearly every game you'll get things like that. In every lesson you'll mental toughness, resilience, good relations, teamwork, and values important. But there's obviously there's loads of other areas of PDMU that come into our games. And here's an example of just as a wee lesson plan for a game called Island, Bridges and Rivers. So the objective of the game, so I've left one objective out, and I want you guys to come up with a second objective maybe for this game. So the objective items included would be understanding the meaning of good relations and how we can promote it through sport. So the kids then, after this game, they have a good idea of good relations and how the games and things like that help to promote that. So what the game is, Islands, Bridges and Rivers, you can see there's a space and there's hula hoops set out. So maybe the coach plays music or tells them to go, they move around, and on the whistle or the call or the music stops, they've got to get into a hoop. So that they've got to get onto an island. The blue is your sea. You don't want to be on the sea when the music or the whistle goes. They get into an island. Now each time the coach might take away a hula hoop, so then people have to share. So you'll see then the next time there might be 2 in a hula hoop, or 3 or 4 in a hoop. As the game goes on, the coach takes more and more away. So each time someone's left on the sea, that's a point to the coach. If everybody's in a hoop, everybody makes it onto an island, that's a point to the class. So it's the class versus the teacher really, or the coach. The kids love it. The objective is then to get them to work together, to realize that their team doesn't matter if this person's their best friend or they're not. They've got to get them onto the island, and you end up seeing a lot of good teamwork and a lot of good communication. They're holding each other, keeping each other off the sea. The game can be progressed then into, you see their progression. I'll not go into it, but I'll leave it there for you. You can go back and look at it. So there's different ways of playing it. So in the chat box, please, can you give me what the second objective might be for that game? What other objectives would the coach or the teacher want to be instilling through that game? So you can see the first one is understanding good relations, working together, helping, maybe everybody in the class, maybe it's your friends or maybe the person that you aren't as friendly with. What might be a second objective? As you're playing that game, what different things do you need for PDMU do you need to use? Just even some of the things that we talked about before. I'll give you a little couple of seconds to give me some suggestions through the chat box, please. It's a good game, that, and the lesson plan is there. Okay, thank you. Some answers coming in now. Cooperation. Let me see. Okay, so demonstrate good communication. There we go. Brilliant. Spatial awareness, absolutely. They've got to realise that they've got to get off the sea onto an island. The kids love it, especially when they realise it's the coach or the teacher versus the class. They want to get one over on you. Let's see, working as a team. Yep, listening to opinions, sharing thoughts and ideas with each other. So excellent. The aim is to work as a team. So say they're all against the coach. And just one more then. Let's see. develop teamwork among classmates. Yeah, absolutely. So perfect example of all those different parts or aspects of PDMU in that game. So to say, maybe it's not the most obvious. Sometimes you think about counting and keeping scores, or you think about drama through dance, reenacting. But you know, PDMU it's a massive one, and it exists in every single game, every lesson that we teach. You know, you always want them to communicate well. You want them to work together, you know, show good values, things like that, good relations. Okay. Okay. So I think we're going about 45 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, as I say, I probably skimmed over some aspects there, and maybe probably could have elaborated on some different aspects, but you know, there's quite a bit to get through there. If there are any questions, if there are any questions that you know that you have, any of the points that I was talking about there that you would like me to answer, feel free to shoot them into the chat box, and as I say, I'll answer many or any that I can. Okay, and just while you're thinking of any questions that you might have, so some of the resources there I've listed: the GEA Learning Portal, the GEA YouTube channel, and then some of the games that I showed there, some of those little videos, the rod and nest and things like that, are on Phys Ed Toolbox on YouTube, and there's another great website. It's called PE and Sport Assessment WordPress.com. It's got great suggestions for incorporating different cross-curricular themes into our PE lessons, different games. You know, and as I say, this list isn't exhaustive. There's loads of different websites and resources out there. So I don't see any questions coming through. People must be. Okay.
Hey Roy, there's no new questions there, so you maybe explained it so well that there's no need for any questions there. So unless if any come in, Rory, I'll let you know, or if not, you can just show all the rest of the slides.
Yep. Yeah? Okay, no problem. Thank you very much, Gareth. So as I say, hopefully touched on enough, you know, for teachers to take away and use some of those ideas in their PE lessons to touch on cross-curricular themes. And there's hundreds of examples that we can do. That's only a small selection. So.
Sorry, Rory, I'm going to interrupt you here. There's somebody has come in just. Will you in the future be doing any training on social distancing based PE ideas if that exists?
Yeah, so we have spoke about it as an organisation. It's very much a work in progress at the minute. We do have some ideas and sort of moving forward. It's a lot of moving parts. Everything at the minute we don't know, you know, what we're going to be doing in September, the new school year. But there will be, for the time being, I suppose we're going to have to look at games and things like that with using less equipment sharing, especially sharing equipment. But the Ulster GEA will be able to help with resources for that sort of thing. As I say, work in progress at the minute. You know, I think everybody's just kind of learning as we go, but it's definitely something we're looking into because it's probably for a while it's going to be a big part of our PE lessons, unfortunately. So if there's nothing else, I just want to say thank you. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I have included kind of lesson plans, some screenshots and videos there in that website, or in the PowerPoint, that we will be sharing with anybody who participated here. Feel free to use them. I hope you know they are of some use to you, and they maybe help create a few ideas of your own, things like that. Is perfect. That's what we want. We do have that's what I mentioned earlier. We were working on a 5th webinar. We do actually have a webinar for next Wednesday. This is a sort of a bonus webinar. It's about promoting wellness and resilience skills in children. Huge topic. You know, your mindfulness and the whole mental health thing. You know, it's a huge topic at the minute. And we've got Barbara Mellon, who has kindly offered to take us through a webinar next Wednesday, the 17th of June at 12. Barbara teaches in Sacred Heart Primary School in Tallyray and is hugely experienced in this. So we're very much looking forward to watching our webinar with Barbara. So I just want to round off by saying thank you very much. feel free to get in touch through the email with Gareth there if there's any questions, if you need anything else. But just for now, thank you very much and stay safe.